The Crystal City's burn commander Zara Thane pressed her scaled palm against the observation window of Defense Station Alpha, watching her world die below. The crystal spires of New Viridian, once gleaming monuments to Volani engineering, now burned with unnatural fire. Korthak plasma weapons had turned the beautiful structures into melting towers of pain, their light refracting through the atmosphere in colors that spoke of ending. "Commander, the eastern districts have fallen silent," reported Lieutenant Kyle, Starweaver, his voice barely steady. The young Volani's bioluminescent patches flickered with stress patterns that betrayed his attempt at military composure. "We're receiving no responses from Sectors 7 through 12. Zara closed her eyes, feeling the weight of her species' history pressing down on her shoulders. For 3,000 years, the Volani had been the galaxy's greatest diplomats, their natural empathy and telepathic abilities making them perfect mediators between warring species. They had never built weapons of mass destruction, never conquered other worlds, never even conceived of the kind of systematic brutality now being visited upon them. "How many evacuation ships made it past the blockade?" she asked, though she dreaded the answer. 17 transports carrying approximately 40,000 civilians, Kale replied, consulting his holographic display. The Korthak intercepted the rest. We estimate that less than 2% of our population escaped the system. 2%. Zara felt her heart sink further into the abyss that had opened within her chest 3 days ago when the Korthak Empire's war fleet had emerged from hyperspace. The attackers had given no warning, offered no terms, demanded no surrender. They had simply begun the systematic extermination of everything Volani. The defense station shuddered as another wave of Korthak fighters strafed its shields. Through the tactical displays, Zara could see the enemy's strategy unfolding with merciless efficiency. The Korthak weren't just conquering Viridian Prime, they were erasing it. Every city, every settlement, every trace of Volani civilization was being methodically destroyed. "Commander," called Chief Engineer Torin Lightbringer from his station across the command center, "shield generators are at 15% capacity. We've lost primary power to weapons arrays 4 through 7. At current rate of attrition, we have perhaps 2 hours before total system failure." Zara nodded grimly. Around her, the last defenders of her world continued their duties with the quiet dignity that had always defined the Volani people. No panic, no screaming, no desperate pleas to gods who seemed to have abandoned them. Just the steady, professional execution of their final responsibilities. The Korthak war machine High Admiral Vex Crushbone stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Bone Harvester, surveying the destruction below with satisfaction. The Volani world burned beautifully, its crystal cities creating spectacular light shows as they melted under his fleet's bombardment. Soon, this sector would be cleansed of the weak, empathetic species that had dared to interfere with Korthak. Expansion through their pathetic diplomatic interventions. "Admiral," growled Captain Thok Bloodripper, his scarred face twisted with predatory glee. "Ground forces report complete control of the northern continent. The Volani refugees hiding in the underground cities have been processed." Vex allowed himself a moment of pleasure at the news. The Korthak Empire had built itself on the principle that strength was the only truth in the universe. The weak existed only to serve the strong, and those too weak to serve deserved only death. The Volani, with their philosophy of peace and understanding, represented everything the Korthak despised about the galaxy. "Excellent. What's the status of their defense stations?" "The orbital platforms are destroyed, Admiral. Only the primary command station remains, and it's barely functional. Our analysts estimate another hour before its shields collapse completely." Vex studied the tactical display showing the lone Volani outpost still offering resistance. It was admirable in a way, how they continued fighting despite the obvious futility of their situation. But ultimately pointless. The Korthak had conquered 47 worlds in the past century, and every battle had ended the same way, with the complete subjugation or elimination of the defending species. "Prepare the planet crackers," Vex commanded. "Once we've eliminated the last defenders, I want every trace of this civilization removed from the galactic record." The Korthak Empire doesn't just defeat its enemies, we erase them. Desperate measures back on Defense Station Alpha, Zara was making the hardest decision of her life. The station's communication array was still functional, giving her one last chance to send a message beyond the system. Not a call for help, which would be pointless at this stage, but a record, a testimony to what the Villani had been, what they had contributed to galactic civilization, and how they had died. Kyle, open an emergency broadcast on all frequencies, maximum power, wide dispersal pattern. Commander, that will drain our remaining power reserves. We'll lose life support within 30 minutes. Do it. As the communication system powered up for its final transmission, Zara composed her thoughts. What could she say that would matter? How could she summarize the hopes, dreams, and achievements of an entire species in a few minutes? To anyone receiving this transmission, she began, her voice carrying the melodic harmonics that made Villani speech so distinctive. This is Commander Zara Thane of the Villani Defense Force, broadcasting from Defense Station Alpha in the Viridian system. Our world is dying. The Korthak Empire has launched a war of extermination against our people, and we estimate that our civilization will be completely destroyed within the next few hours. She paused, watching through the viewports as another of their beautiful cities vanished in a flash of nuclear fire. We were not warriors. We believed in peace, in understanding, in the possibility that different species could work together to build something better than any one of us could achieve alone. Perhaps that belief was naive. Perhaps the universe truly does belong to the strong and the ruthless. The station shook again, more violently this time. Warning lights flashed across every console as primary systems began failing one by one. But if there are others out there who still believe in something more than conquest and domination, remember us. Remember that we tried to build bridges instead of weapons, to heal instead of harm, to understand instead of destroy. And if you have the power to stop what's happening here from happening to others, please find the strength to act. The transmission ended as the communication array overloaded, sending sparks cascading across the command center. In the sudden quiet that followed, broken only by the hum of failing systems and the distant rumble of explosions, Zara felt an odd sense of peace. She had done what she could. The rest was beyond her control. Death from above. The Korthak bombardment intensified as Admiral Vex ordered the final assault on Defense Station Alpha. Massive Dreadnought-class ships maneuvered into position, their planet-killing weapons charging for the killing blow. Ground forces reported that the last pockets of Villani resistance on the surface had been eliminated. Soon, the conquest would be complete. Admiral, reported the tactical officer. Long range, sensors are detecting some kind of energy disturbance at the edge of the system. It appears to be... Wait, that can't be right. Vex turned from his contemplation of the dying world below. Report. Sir, the disturbance is expanding. Multiple contact signatures emerging from what appears to be artificially generated hyperspace. Rifts. Configuration unknown, but the energy output is significant. For the first time since the battle began, Vex felt a flicker of uncertainty. The Korthak intelligence network was extensive, covering most of this sector of the galaxy. They should have detected any fleet movements large enough to pose a threat to his forces. Numbers and composition? The tactical officer's face had gone pale, his earlier confidence replaced by obvious confusion. Admiral, I'm reading over 200 contacts. Ship classes unknown, but some of them are registering as larger than our dreadnoughts. Energy signatures are unlike anything in our databases. Vex snarled, his predatory instincts warning him that something had gone very wrong with what should have been a simple extermination operation. Sound general alert. All ships to combat readiness. If someone wants to challenge the Korthak Empire for this worthless system, they'll learn the same lesson as the Villani. But even as he gave the orders, Admiral Vex couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed. The energy readings from the new arrivals were off the charts, suggesting technology that shouldn't exist in this part of the galaxy. More troubling was their timing. These ships had arrived at the exact moment when the Villani were making their final stand, as if they had been waiting for this moment. On Defense Station Alpha, Chief Engineer Torin noticed the sensor readings. First, Commander, We're detecting massive hyperspace emergences at the system periphery. Something big is coming through. Zara felt a spark of hope flicker in her chest, then immediately crushed it. Hope was a luxury she couldn't afford, not when it might make her final decisions more difficult. But as the sensor readings continued to pour in, showing ship after ship materializing from the void, she found herself wondering if her desperate transmission had somehow been answered. "Can we identify them?" she asked. "Negative, Commander. The signatures don't match any known species in our databases. Whoever they are, they're using technology we've never seen before." The new arrivals were deploying in a complex formation that spoke of tactical sophistication and unified command. These weren't pirates or raiders stumbling into a battle zone. This was a fleet with purpose, moving with the precision of a military force that knew exactly what it intended to do. The unknown factor. As the mysterious fleet continued to emerge from hyperspace, both the desperate Volani defenders and the confident Korthak invaders found themselves watching the same tactical displays with growing amazement. The newcomers' ships were sleek and angular, their hulls reflecting light in ways that suggested advanced metallurgy. More importantly, their energy outputs were registering at levels that defied conventional understanding of starship engineering. Admiral Vex opened a communication channel, his voice carrying the authority of an empire that had never known defeat. "Unknown vessels, you are entering a Korthak Empire military operation zone. Identify yourselves immediately and withdraw, or be destroyed as enemies of the Empire." The response came on all frequencies, broadcast in perfect Korthak military protocol despite the alien accent that colored every word. "Korthak Fleet, this is Admiral Marcus Rivera of the Earth Defense Force. You are hereby ordered to cease all hostile actions against the inhabitants of this system and withdraw immediately. This is your only warning." Earth. The name meant nothing to Vex or his officers. Their intelligence networks had never encountered a species calling itself human or claiming dominion over a world called Earth. Yet here they were, apparently confident enough to challenge the might of the Korthak Empire. "Admiral Rivera," Vexi replied, allowing his voice to carry the contempt he felt for any species foolish enough to oppose him. "You have made a fatal error in judgment. The Korthak Empire bows to no one. Your fleet will be destroyed, and your world will be marked for future conquest." The human response was immediate and devastating. "Admiral Vex, your empire ends here." What happened next would be remembered as the moment everything changed. The Earth fleet moved with a coordination that suggested not just superior training, but superior technology. Their ships accelerated to impossible speeds, deployed weapons that bent space itself, and demonstrated tactical capabilities that made the Korthak war machine look primitive by comparison. The first exchange of fire lasted exactly 37 seconds and left 12 Korthak warships as expanding clouds of plasma and debris. The survivors of Admiral Vex's mighty fleet, veterans of dozens of successful conquests, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy that fought like the universe itself had taken sides against them. On Defense Station Alpha, Commander Zara Thane watched the impossible battle unfold and felt something she had thought lost forever: hope. The humans, whoever they were, had not just arrived at their darkest hour. They had come prepared for war against an empire that had never known defeat. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity had been watching, waiting, and preparing for this moment. And now, finally, the hunters had become the hunted. Humanity reveals its hand admiral. Marcus Rivera stood on the bridge of the EDS Retribution, watching the tactical display with the cold satisfaction of a predator that had finally cornered its prey. For 18 months, Earth's intelligence networks had been tracking Korthak expansion patterns, documenting their atrocities, and preparing for this inevitable confrontation. The extermination of the Volani was supposed to be another routine conquest for the Korthak Empire. Instead, it would become their introduction to humanity's vision of justice. "Admiral," reported Captain Sarah Chen from the tactical station, "all fleet elements are in position. We have the Korthak forces completely surrounded. Their formation suggests they're preparing for a conventional engagement. Rivera nodded, his weathered face showing no emotion despite the fury burning in his chest. The intelligence reports from Korthak-controlled worlds had painted a picture of systematic genocide, slavery, and cultural destruction that had pushed the normally patient Earth government past the point of diplomatic solutions. Today, humanity would make a statement that would echo across the galaxy. "Open a channel to all Earth Defense Force vessels," Rivera commanded. "Operation Thunderstrike is now active. Remember, we're not just fighting for the Villani, we're fighting for every peaceful species that has suffered under Korthak brutality. Show them what happens when humanity decides enough is enough." The response from his fleet was immediate and coordinated. 300 human vessels moved as one, their formation shifting from the defensive posture they had maintained during deployment to an aggressive configuration that maximized their technological advantages. Each ship represented decades of human engineering driven by a single purpose: ensuring that Earth would never again be helpless in a hostile galaxy. On Defense Station Alpha, Commander Zara Thane watched the human fleet's deployment with growing amazement. The ships moved with a precision that suggested artificial intelligence assistance, but the tactical decisions showed the creative unpredictability that marked organic command structures. Whatever the humans were, they had achieved a perfect fusion of technological capability and strategic thinking. "Commander," Lieutenant Kale called out, his voice filled with wonder, "the human ships are hailing us directly." A new voice filled the Villani Command Center, speaking their language with an accent that suggested careful study rather than natural fluency. "Commander Thane, this is Admiral Rivera. We've been monitoring your situation and are prepared to render immediate assistance. Please maintain your current position and prepare to coordinate with our forces." Zara found her voice after a moment of stunned silence. "Admiral Rivera, we are grateful for any assistance, but you must understand the odds you're facing. The Korthak fleet consists of over 200 warships, including 12 Dreadnought-class vessels. Our own defenses have been completely overwhelmed." Rivera's response carried a confidence that seemed almost arrogant given the circumstances. "Commander, we appreciate your concern, but the Earth Defense Force has been preparing for this engagement longer than you might imagine. Trust me when I say we know exactly what we're dealing with." The art of war. Human-style Admiral Vex Crushbone stared at his tactical displays with growing disbelief. The human fleet's movement patterns defied every principle of conventional space warfare. Instead of forming traditional battle lines or adopting defensive formations, the Earth vessels were spreading throughout the system in what appeared to be a chaotic scatter pattern. To Korthak military doctrine, it looked like rank amateur confusion. "Admiral," growled Captain Thockblood Ripper, "the humans are dispersing their forces. They're giving us the opportunity to engage them piecemeal. Should we begin the attack?" Vex considered the tactical situation. His experience commanding Korthak fleets had taught him to be suspicious of enemies who made seemingly obvious mistakes. The humans had arrived with impressive fanfare and substantial numbers, but their deployment suggested either incompetence or a level of tactical thinking that transcended Korthak understanding. "Begin the attack," he ordered finally, "but maintain formation integrity. If this is some kind of trap, I want us ready to respond as a unified force." The Korthak fleet launched its assault with the brutal efficiency that had conquered 47 worlds. Plasma cannons capable of melting starship hulls opened fire across vast distances, while missile swarms accelerated toward their targets with enough destructive power to crack planetary crusts. It was a coordinated barrage that had never failed to overwhelm enemy defenses through sheer overwhelming force. The human response redefined Vex's understanding of what was possible in space combat. Instead of absorbing the attack on their shields or attempting to outmaneuver the incoming weapons, the Earth vessels simply weren't there when the Korthak barrage arrived. They moved with impossible agility, their ships dancing between plasma, bolts and missile strikes as if the laws of physics were merely suggestions. "Impossible," breathed the Korthak tactical officer. "Admiral, they're pulling acceleration forces that should liquefy any organic crew. Their reaction times are beyond biological capability." What the Korthak didn't understand was that humanity, had long ago transcended the limitations of unaugmented biology. The human crews weren't just trained soldiers, they were enhanced warriors whose nervous systems had been modified to interface directly with their ship's computer systems. Combined with artificial gravity compensation and medical nanotechnology that could repair cellular damage in real time, human crews could survive maneuvers that would kill any other known species. The first phase of the battle ended with 0 human casualties and 18 destroyed Korthak vessels. The survivors of Vex's fleet found themselves facing an enemy that seemed to violate every principle of space warfare they had ever learned. Technological superiority. As the battle continued, the true extent of humanity's technological advancement became apparent. The Earth vessels weren't just faster and more maneuverable than their Korthak counterparts. They were fighting with weapons that seemed to bend the fundamental laws of the universe. Captain Chen reported from her station with barely contained excitement. "Admiral, all primary targets are locked. Quantum disruptors are charged and ready. Gravitational lance arrays are standing by." Rivera nodded, then opened a fleet-wide channel. "All vessels commence Phase 2. Show them what human ingenuity looks like when it's focused on warfare." The human attack began with weapons that the Korthak had never encountered and couldn't understand. Quantum disruptors fired beams of coherent energy that didn't just penetrate enemy shields, they convinced the quantum fields that generated those shields that they had never existed in the first place. Gravitational lances created localized space-time distortions that could crush warships like tin cans or fling them across star systems. But perhaps most terrifying of all were humanity's kinetic weapons. Railguns that could accelerate projectiles to significant fractions of light speed turned simple metal slugs into planet-killing weapons. When these struck Korthak vessels, the results were spectacular explosions that lit up space like miniature supernovas. Admiral Vex watched his fleet being systematically dismantled by an enemy that seemed to exist on a completely different technological level. Ships that had conquered worlds were being destroyed faster than his tactical computers could track. The Bone Harvester itself shuddered as a human destroyer passed within weapons range, its defensive systems barely deflecting a gravitational pulse that could have torn his flagship apart. "All vessels, emergency retreat pattern 7, Vex commanded, abandoning any pretense of maintaining the offensive. "Fall back to rally point Theta and prepare for emergency hyperspace jump." But the humans had anticipated this response. As the Korthak fleet attempted to withdraw, they found their escape routes blocked by Earth vessels that had positioned themselves with prescient accuracy. The humans hadn't just outfought them, they had outthought them at every level of strategic planning. Ground Zero. While the space battle raged above, humanity was simultaneously addressing the Korthak occupation forces on Viridian Prime's surface. What the Villani witnessed from their underground shelters would become the stuff of legend throughout the galaxy. Human dropships descended through the atmosphere like controlled meteors, their hulls glowing with atmospheric friction as they decelerated at forces that should have been fatal to any organic crew. When they landed, what emerged weren't just soldiers but something that redefined the concept of infantry combat. Colonel Diana Vasquez led the first wave of human Marines, her enhanced physiology allowing her to operate in the high-gravity environment. While wearing powered armor that made her look more like a walking tank than a person, each Marine was a perfect fusion of human determination and technological enhancement, carrying weapons that could level city blocks and armor that could withstand direct hits from artillery. "All units, this is ground command," she broadcast to her forces. "Rules of engagement are clear. Any Korthak forces threatening civilians are to be eliminated with extreme prejudice. We didn't travel 1,200 light-years to let genocide continue on our watch." The Korthak ground forces, veterans of dozens of planetary conquests, found themselves facing an enemy that fought with a ferocity that bordered on the supernatural. Human Marines moved through their defensive positions like unstoppable forces of nature, their weapons cutting through Korthak armor as if it were made of paper. What truly terrified the Korthak ground commanders wasn't just the humans' technological superiority, it was their tactical intelligence. The Earth forces seemed to know exactly where every Korthak unit was positioned, exactly which buildings contained civilians, and exactly how to maximize damage to enemy forces while minimizing harm to the Villani population. "This is Sector Command," screamed Korthak General Scar Bonecrusher into his communicator. "We need immediate orbital support. The humans are cutting through our positions like they know our exact deployment patterns." But orbital support would never come. Above the planet, Admiral Vex's fleet was fighting for its own survival against an enemy that seemed to possess capabilities that bordered on the mythical. The Korthak war machine, which had seemed unstoppable for over a century, was being systematically dismantled by a species they had never heard of until 3 hours ago. The price of tyranny. As the battle entered its final phase, the scope of humanity's victory became clear to everyone in the system. The Korthak fleet, which had arrived as conquerors preparing to commit genocide, was now reduced to scattered survivors, desperately trying to escape a battlefield that had become their graveyard. Admiral Rivera opened a system-wide communication channel, ensuring that both the defeated Korthak forces and the rescued Villani would hear his words clearly. "To all survivors of the Korthak fleet," he began, his voice carrying the authority of a species that had just announced its presence to the galaxy in the most dramatic way possible. "You came to this system to commit genocide against a peaceful people. You believed that strength gave you the right to destroy anyone weaker than yourselves. Today, you have learned that there is always someone stronger." He paused, watching, as the last few Korthak vessels attempted to reach minimum safe distance for hyperspace jumps that would never come. "Your empire's expansion ends here. Return to your worlds and carry this message. Earth will not tolerate the continued brutalization of peaceful species. We have been watching, preparing, and waiting for this moment. The age of unchallenged tyranny in this galaxy is over." The transmission ended just as the final Korthak dreadnought, the mighty Bone Harvester, suffered a catastrophic systems failure under focused fire from 3 human battleships. Admiral Vex's flagship, symbol of Korthak military might, became a slowly expanding cloud of debris that would orbit Viridian Prime as a monument to the day everything changed. On Defense Station Alpha, Commander Zara Thane watched the destruction of the invasion force with emotions she couldn't name. Relief, certainly, and gratitude beyond measure, but also a profound sense that she was witnessing the birth of a new era in galactic politics. "Commander," Lieutenant Kale reported, his voice filled with wonder, "we're receiving a direct communication from Admiral Rivera. He's requesting permission to dock with the station for face-to-face diplomatic contact." Zara nodded, still struggling to process the magnitude of what had just occurred. In less than 4 hours, a species she had never heard of had appeared from nowhere, destroyed a fleet that had conquered dozens of worlds, and saved her people from extinction. Now they wanted to talk. "Grant permission," she said finally. "And, Lieutenant, prepare the formal reception chamber. I think we're about to make some very important new friends." As human shuttles began their approach to the battered but still functional defense station, the galaxy held its breath. Word of the battle was already spreading through intelligence networks and communication relays, carrying news that would reshape the balance of power among the stars. Humanity had revealed itself not as another predatory empire seeking to expand its territory, but as something far more dangerous to the galaxy's established order, a species with the power to enforce its moral convictions on others. The Korthak Empire's reign of terror had ended not through gradual decline or internal collapse, but through the sudden intervention of a force that redefined what was possible in galactic warfare. The age of human guardianship had begun, though. Few yet understood the full implications of what that would mean for the future of interstellar civilization. A new dawn for the Galaxy First Contact Protocol. The docking bay of Defense Station Alpha had never hosted anything like the shuttle that now settled onto its landing platform with impossible grace. The human vessel was smaller than Villani transport, craft, but carried itself with the confident efficiency that had characterized everything about the mysterious Earth forces. As the airlock cycled open, Commander Zara Thane found herself holding her breath, preparing to meet the species that had just rewritten galactic history. Admiral Marcus Rivera emerged first, his presence immediately commanding despite his relatively modest stature compared to the towering Villani. He wore a simple dark blue uniform adorned with insignia that spoke of earned authority rather than inherited privilege. Behind him came 2 other humans, a woman with the bearing of a scientist, and a man whose enhanced physiology marked him as one of the enhanced soldiers who had decimated Korthak ground forces. "Commander Thane," Rivera said, extending his hand in the universal gesture of peaceful greeting. "I'm Admiral Rivera, and this is Dr. Elena Vasquez, our chief xenobiologist, and Colonel James Harrison, commander of our Marine forces. On behalf of Earth and all humanity, please accept our condolences for the losses your people have suffered." Zara accepted the gesture, marveling at the warmth of human skin and the controlled strength in Rivera's grip. "Admiral Rivera, the Villani people owe you a debt that can never be repaid. You arrived at our darkest hour and saved us from extinction. We must ask, however, how did humanity know of our plight, and why did you choose to intervene?" Dr. Vasquez stepped forward, her expression mixing scientific curiosity with genuine compassion. "Commander, the answer to your question requires some explanation of humanity's recent history. Perhaps we could continue this conversation in more comfortable surroundings?" The meeting relocated to the station's diplomatic suite, where holographic displays could illustrate the scope of what Zara was about to learn. As they settled around the curved conference table, Dr. Vasquez activated a three-dimensional map that showed this entire sector of the galaxy in stunning detail. 18 months ago, she began, Earth's deep space monitoring stations detected unusual gravitational anomalies consistent with large fleet movements in this region. When we investigated, we discovered a pattern of systematic conquest and genocide being perpetrated by the Korthak Empire against peaceful civilizations. The display zoomed in to show dozens of star systems, many marked with ominous red indicators. What we found horrified us. 47 worlds had been conquered, their populations enslaved or eliminated, their cultures destroyed. The Korthak weren't just expanding their territory, they were committing systematic xenocide on a galactic scale. Zara felt her bioluminescent patches dim with sorrow as she absorbed the scope of the tragedy. 47 worlds. We knew the Korthak were aggressive, but we had no idea of the scale of their crimes. Admiral Rivera leaned forward, his expression grave. "Commander, humanity faced a choice. We could remain hidden, develop our defenses, and hope the Korthak expansion never reached Earth, or we could take action to protect the innocent. For us, it wasn't really a choice at all." Colonel Harrison spoke for the first time, his augmented voice carrying the conviction of a soldier who had seen too much unnecessary death. "We've been monitoring Korthak expansion patterns for months, waiting for the right moment to intervene. When our intelligence networks detected their fleet movements toward the Viridian system, we knew this was our opportunity to make a statement." "Statement?" Zara asked. "That the age of unchallenged tyranny in this galaxy is over?" Rivera replied. "Today's battle wasn't just about saving the Villani, though that was certainly our primary objective. It was about announcing to every predatory empire in the galaxy that their victims now have protectors." The human revelation, Dr. Vasquez manipulated the holographic display to show Earth itself, rotating slowly to reveal a world that looked deceptively peaceful compared to the military might they had just witnessed. "Commander, to understand what humanity offers the galaxy, you need to understand what we are. Earth is what xenobiologists classify as a death world, a planet where evolution has been driven by constant environmental pressure and competition." The display zoomed in to show various regions of Earth, volcanic chains that could destroy continents, storm systems that dwarfed anything on more stable worlds, and predators that had driven human evolution toward intelligence, cooperation, and technological innovation as survival strategies. "For most of our history," Dr. Vasquez continued, "humans have been forced to adapt or die. We developed technologies not for conquest or expansion, but for survival in an environment that was actively trying to kill us. When we finally achieved interstellar travel, we brought that same adaptive mindset to the challenge of ensuring our species' survival in a hostile galaxy." Colonel Harrison activated another display showing human military technology. "What you witnessed today represents 2 centuries of human military evolution. Our weapons, our tactics, our training protocols all developed with one goal: ensuring that no hostile force could threaten peaceful civilizations under our protection. Zara studied the technical specifications with growing amazement. Human technology wasn't just advanced. It was designed with a philosophical foundation that she had never encountered before. Every system, every weapon, every defensive capability was built around the principle of protecting the weak rather than exploiting them. Your gravitational weapons, she said, highlighting one particularly impressive system. The energy requirements alone should be impossible for ships of that size. 0-point energy extraction, Dr. Vasquez explained. We learned to tap directly into the quantum vacuum for power. It was originally developed for Earth's expanding population, but we found that it had applications for defensive systems as, well. Admiral Rivera stood and walked to the viewing port, looking out at the debris field that had once been a Korthak invasion fleet. Commander, what I'm about to propose will change not just the relationship between Earth and Viridian, but the entire political structure of this region of the galaxy. He turned back to face the Villani delegation, his expression serious but hopeful. Earth wants to establish the Galactic Protection Coalition, an alliance of peaceful species dedicated to mutual defense and cooperation. We're not seeking to build an empire or impose our values on others. We're offering to ensure that species like yours can develop their own civilizations without fear of conquest or extinction. The coalition form's Lieutenant Kale Starweaver entered the conference room with urgent news. Commander, we're receiving communications from 17 different star systems. Word of today's battle has spread through the intelligence networks, and multiple species are requesting contact with Earth forces. Dr. Vasquez smiled, having anticipated this development. The demonstration effect. Once word spreads that the Korthak can be defeated, every species they've threatened will want to know who their saviors are. Admiral Rivera activated his personal communicator. Captain Chen, status report on fleet deployment. Admiral, we have confirmation requests from 23 different species for diplomatic contact. Our deep space monitoring stations are detecting significant fleet movements from multiple empires, suggesting that today's events have caused considerable concern among the established powers. Understood. Deploy diplomatic vessels to all requesting systems but maintain combat readiness. Our victory today may have prevented one genocide, but it's also likely to provoke responses from other aggressive empires. Zara considered the implications of what she was hearing. Admiral, you're talking about fundamentally reshaping galactic politics. The established empires won't simply accept the emergence of a new power that threatens their expansion. No, they won't, Rivera agreed. Which is why the coalition needs to be more than just Earth protecting everyone else. We need genuine partnerships between species that complement each other's strengths. Dr. Vasquez leaned forward enthusiastically. Commander, the Villani have achieved something that Earth scientists have been working toward for centuries: true ecological harmony with your planetary environment. Your biotechnology could help us restore worlds damaged by warfare, while our defensive capabilities ensure you have the security to continue developing those technologies. Colonel Harrison added his perspective. Your people's empathic abilities make you natural diplomats and mediators. In a galaxy where so many conflicts arise from miscommunication and misunderstanding, the Villani could serve as bridges between species that might otherwise be incompatible. Zara felt the weight of the moment settling on her shoulders. The decision she made here would affect not just the Villani, but potentially every peaceful species in the galaxy. Admiral Rivera, if we accept your proposal, what would membership in this coalition actually mean? Mutual defense, shared technology, cultural exchange, and coordinated exploration of new frontiers, Rivera replied without hesitation. Earth provides military protection and advanced defensive technologies. Member species contribute their own unique capabilities and perspectives. Together, we build something stronger than any empire based on conquest and oppression. The Galactic Response. As news of the Korthak defeat spread throughout the galaxy, the responses varied dramatically depending on the nature of each civilization receiving the reports. In the territories of peaceful species that had lived in fear of Korthak expansion, celebrations erupted spontaneously as word arrived that the seemingly unstoppable empire had been comprehensively defeated. On the hegemony of Scar's capital, World Emperor Vash Ironscale convened an emergency session of his War Council to analyze the implications of humanity's emergence. The reptilian ruler had built his empire on the principle that superior force was the only truth in the universe, and the sudden appearance of a species capable of destroying Korthak fleets challenged his fundamental worldview. Great Emperor, reported Intelligence Director Thes Shadowstrike, our analysis of the battle data suggests that human technology is at least 2 centuries ahead of anything in our databases. Their weapons appear to manipulate fundamental forces in ways that our scientists consider theoretically impossible. Emperor Ironscale's claws scraped against the stone of his throne as he considered this information. Recommendations: immediate cessation of expansion operations until we can assess human intentions and capabilities. If they are truly committed to protecting peaceful species, direct confrontation would be inadvisable. On the other side of the galaxy, the crystalline beings of the Shattered Empire received the news with their characteristic analytical detachment. Their queen, a collective consciousness spanning millions of individual crystal matrices, processed the information and reached a conclusion that would have surprised many organic species. This development represents opportunity rather than threat, the Queen declared through her primary communication matrix. If the humans are sincere in their stated intentions, cooperation with their coalition could provide access to technologies that complement our own capabilities while eliminating the need to maintain expensive defensive forces. But perhaps the most significant response came from the neutral worlds, species that had maintained their independence by avoiding conflict with the major powers. For them, humanity's emergence offered something they had never dared hope for: the possibility of true security, without the cost of joining predatory empires or maintaining massive military forces. Legacy of choice. In the weeks following the Battle of Viridian, as historians would later name it, the transformation of galactic politics accelerated beyond anyone's predictions. 17 species formally requested membership in the Galactic Protection Coalition within the first month, bringing with them technologies, perspectives, and capabilities that enriched the alliance beyond Earth's most optimistic projections. Commander Zara Thane found herself serving as the Coalition's first director of interspecies relations, a position that utilized the Villani's natural diplomatic abilities, while allowing her to help shape the organization that had saved her people. The floating cities of New Viridian became a center for Coalition activities, their crystal spires now gleaming with renewed hope rather than burning with conquest. Dr. Vasquez established the Coalition's Xenobiological Research Institute on Viridian Prime, where human and Villani scientists worked together to develop technologies that could heal worlds damaged by warfare and restore ecosystems devastated by industrial exploitation. Their first major success was the restoration of the Korthak-damaged continents on Viridian Prime itself, using a combination of human engineering and Villani biotechnology. Colonel Harrison, now General Harrison, oversaw the establishment of Coalition Defense Academies, where the military traditions of multiple species were combined to create defensive strategies that no single empire could overcome. The academies became symbols of the Coalition's philosophy: strength through cooperation rather than domination. Admiral Rivera, promoted to Supreme Commander of Coalition forces, established protocols that would govern humanity's role as the galaxy's protectors. Earth would never impose its values on others, never demand tribute or submission from protected worlds, and never use its military superiority for territorial expansion. The galaxy had seen enough empires built on conquest. The Coalition would be something entirely different. As the first anniversary of the Battle of Viridian approached, representatives from 43 species gathered in the restored crystal halls of New Viridian to formally establish the Coalition Charter. The document they signed that day would become the foundation for a new era of galactic civilization, one built on cooperation rather than conquest, protection rather than predation. Admiral Rivera stood before the assembled delegates, looking out at a gathering that represented more species diversity than had ever been assembled for peaceful purposes. Today we commit ourselves to a simple but revolutionary principle: that the strong exist to protect the weak, not to exploit them. That technological advancement should serve the cause of peace, not the machinery of war. that the galaxy belongs to all sentient species, not just the ones with the biggest fleets. The cheers that followed his words echoed through the crystal chambers and out into space, where coalition patrol fleets maintained their vigilant watch against the empires that still threatened peaceful worlds. The age of unchallenged tyranny was indeed over, replaced by something that had never existed before in galactic history: a military force dedicated to peace rather than conquest. As the ceremony concluded and delegates began planning their return to worlds that were now safe from predatory empires, Zarathane reflected on how much had changed since that desperate day when she had broadcast what she thought would be her people's final message to the galaxy. That message had been answered not by gods or fate, but by a species that had chosen to turn its evolutionary advantages toward protecting others rather than destroying them. The humans had kept their promise. The galaxy would never be the same. In the years that followed, the coalition would face new challenges, discover new worlds, and encounter new species. Some would join willingly, others would require persuasion, and a few would need to be stopped from threatening their neighbors. But through it all, the principle established at Viridian would remain constant. In a universe where strength too often meant oppression, humanity had chosen to ensure that strength would serve justice instead. The survivors had not just been saved. They had become the foundation for a new kind of galactic civilization, one where hope was stronger than fear, cooperation more powerful than conquest, and where the phrase "humanity's vengeance fell from orbit" came to mean not destruction, but salvation.